All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call and another Countdown to Classic call about classic news, which is fantastic. Turns out my not so wild prediction recently on the show about this being the start of the waterfall of classic news has somewhat come true. And here we are, 8 days after the last time I sat down and discussed some news with some listeners, and we've got just a little bit more. Not necessarily an epic update, but something that will mean a lot to many of you who obviously engage in PvP a fair bit. Now, I've again put the bat signal up, and 3 amazing listeners have answered the call. Once again, we've got Sonosuke here, who 8 days ago answered the call regarding the last batch of news. Sonosuke, I can't thank you enough for doing this again. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm excited to talk about some of this stuff.
And we've got always reliable, always amazing Ayle. How are you, mate?
I was hoping that was me and not the next guy.
You're like, oh God, what's he going to say about me? And I'll say the exact same thing about the next person. It's been a little while between drinks, but you've been on the show before and you were absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad to have you back. Fredmunroe, how are you?
Well, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, mate. So these 3 wonderful minds I'm more than happy to break down this news with, and I need you guys as per usual because I've mentioned on the show I wasn't the world's biggest PvP player, but I still definitely dabbled in it. I loved it. However, here's the funny thing about me. I never played AV. I wasn't into it at all. I just focused on my little Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin games, and I was really happy with that. I almost never played AV, but you guys all tell me that you played quite a bit of it back in the day, so you're great people to have here. So let's just start generally. We got this post in the last few hours, and Blizzard has told us, guess what, guys? You're getting the 1.12 version of Alterac Valley. And to a lot of people, that means what has come to be known as the nerfed version of Alterac Valley. So, Fredmunroe, I might start with you. Talk to me about why people use that term of nerf with this version of Alterac Valley.
Right. So basically, all the PvE content in it is nerfed. So the map goes way faster. So just for some examples, there used to be landmines that were off the beaten path. So if you try to rush past objectives, you just die to landmines. There used to be huge roaming packs of NPCs that you had to deal with even on the path. And there's also a lot of PvE elements for example, you go into these caves, which you need to do for certain quests. And you could, people would be gathering up armor scraps and blood and all this other stuff to do huge PvE pushes. And a lot of that stuff really is kind of no longer in the game. In the 1.12 version, it really is just sort of the rush fest.
Okay. Now, Ayle, I'll piggyback off of that and say, now that we know what this so-called nerfed version of AV is, tell me why it's disappointing.
I think the big thing that disappoints me about it is that it's really similar to a modern retail version of AV. It's similar in the way that you play it. Most often, people take kind of the path of least resistance in AV, which is basically everybody, buffs up, mounts up, and heads straight for the final boss. And you it's like 2 ships passing in the night. Your team runs there, their team runs to your boss, and then whoever kills the boss first wins, where the old AV was not like that at all.
So is it the case is it a relatively fair, crude assessment to make that it has devolved in the 1.12 version into almost a mini PvE encounter where the PvP players run right by each other, forget the PvP, and just go for the PvE portion of it in order to win the round?
Exactly. There was a lot of PvE before as well in the older version, but it was more of a battle, where now it's a lot of games you don't even encounter anybody. It's just a pure rush with no PvP at all.
Sonosuke, you mentioned to me that you played a lot of AV before the nerf as well, way back in the day when obviously we were going through vanilla. Talk to me about how you feel about your love for pre-1.12 AV and whether or not you are disappointed by this decision by Blizzard to go with the 1.12 version.
Yeah, the main thing that is disappointing to me is what the 1.12 version is what it's going to be as far as if you're dealing with a pre-made, is it's going to be between a 5 and a 10-minute game where there's no PvP. It's just going to be that pre-made going in, killing the boss, getting out, getting their honor tokens, getting their honor, getting their XP, or not XP, getting their rep. And then what it was back in the day was it was like kind of like an epic slogfest, and then you had to come up with like creative ways to do things. One of the things that I did is when I was playing my rogue is I would set up a small team of like 3 or 4 rogues with like a druid. We would go back cap, and then we would have like a really interesting where we would just have to hold the towers as like a small 5-man against any comers. And it was really fun. It was really cool to have that like little tiny battle. It felt like you actually had a place and you were doing something epic, and there's this massive battle raging on out on the outside, and it was just really fun. And I think with the 1.12, you're going to obviously miss that, and that's the most disappointing thing for me. What I hope is that, I don't know, we'll have to see how all the pathing and stuff works too, but it's probably going to be 5 to 10 minute games for the most part for a lot of players on a lot of servers, and that's going to be pretty cheap feeling.
You probably have the same memories that I do where, you queued up for an AV late at night, and then, you played for 4 hours, nothing happened. You log in the next day, and it's the exact same AV that you came into.
Yeah, I remember AVs going on for multiple days. I'm not sure what patch it was, but I do remember queuing as a 40-man with my PvE raid, and we just went in there and just raffle stomped everyone. It was really fun. So I'm not sure exactly how they're going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff, but yeah, the AVs used to go on for days, or sometimes it'd be like 4 or 6 hours. You get like this gritty win and you feel great. You don't actually earn that much rep or anything, so grinding to getting the epic mount, which is actually cheaper than regular mounts, was more difficult. So the fact that everyone get the cheaper mounts sooner, depending on what price they use for the mounts, is also an interesting aspect. And also the gear, obviously, if you're able to grind out, like, you can grind out with the 1.12, you can get exalted within a few hours. So you get all the epics within a few hours.
I wanted to touch on one of the points.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Earlier. And that was just how you said that you'd have like a group of rogues going like back cap. Something that I think was unique for AV compared to the other battlegrounds is that it was really like dynamic PvP depending on what you did. And it let everybody kind of feel important. So like for me, I played a mage. We would set up like mage bombing groups. So we'd put all the mages in a group, and then, on the attack, rogues would be backcapping. We would be bombing a graveyard, while like rogues were backcapping, right? There'd be like 5 or 6 mages. We'd all hit a graveyard, an arcane explosion, and just try and blow everything up. And having like that small group, PvP that was like really different and really like important depending on, what role you wanted to play was something that was really unique.
Fredmunroe, I'll come back to you and just say we've heard of these chats. Obviously, the guys have mentioned these days-long matches that, a lot of people know was part of the appeal of Alterac Valley, and people really were yearning for that in Classic. Does this news that they're going with the 1.12 version, and obviously they've made mention of the fact that, early on in AV, there were too many NPCs and they were too hard to kill. By removing those NPCs, by nerfing their health pools, the ones that remain, is it pretty much rip to those days-long Alterac Valley matches?
Yeah, it's definitely ripped to the days-long one. I mean, you can still have several-hour ones. So just to give you an example, on some of the private servers, like Elysium, for example, when it first came out, it was like partially nerfed. They didn't have landmines, didn't have as many NPCs, although they were later added. But during that first week, when people were like all grinding out rep trying to get exalted on the nerfed version, and it was just like 20-minute Circ Fest, it was possible for like a group of like 4 or 5 mages to stay by like a certain choke point, and then they could just totally wreck like a 40-man group who's all mounted up with like, their Frost Novas and their Arcane Explosions and their Cone of Cold and that sort of stuff. So I could see that still happening in this version where you like, especially if you have a race where you like have like a 5 or 6 man group that's just set up, just to stop it. But that'll make, an AV last at most like 2, 3, 4 hours, not days and days long.
I'll leave this one open to the floor and first in best dressed, but talk to me someone about the significance of removing the drops from opposing players. So as they've mentioned, they've taken away the dwarf spines, the orc teeth, the human bone chips. Now, to me, again, as someone who didn't spend much time in Alterac Valley, that reads as though, that's even less of an incentive to get engaged in PvP. Is that the right interpretation, or is there a bit more to it, and how do you guys feel about it?
I'll just start off by saying one of the major things that did was it allowed you to grind rep with particular factions that are not PvP factions. So, for example, if you turned in a spine to, I don't remember who wants a spine, but some, basically it's like a gnome, a human, a dwarf, and a night elf, each want a different item from the other side. And when you turn that in, you actually get rep with with Darnassus, with Stormwind, with Ironforge, with Gnomeron Exile. So without that ability, it's going to sort of disincentivize people to try to farm players to try to build their rep with other factions.
I think they took that out a lot of, I remember, because there would be people who still wouldn't PvP, they just only wanted to loot people, and they would just run around looting everybody. I remember that was a little bit of a annoying.
Now, I'll just raise a question from listener Jamie, who's been on the show before, and Sonosuke, I might start with this one. I might start with you for this one. She said, how is this one going to affect the honor ranking system? And also, well, let's start with that. It's a two-part question, so let's just start there. How do you think this one will affect the honor ranking system?
I don't think it's going to affect it really that much at all. I think what it's going to do is just basically all you use AV for is you're going to use it for immediately ranking up your reputation. And then after that, rankers are only going to really do AV when they're getting double points, if that's a thing. So that'll be the only time they'll do it. I don't think it really matters. Warsong Gold should AV, in my opinion, matter way more than AV does for rankers.
Okay. You other two guys pretty much agree with that?
Yeah, I think that pretty much nails it.
He's nailed it? Yep. Okay.
He's nailed it. Yeah, sorry. We both said the same thing.
That's all right. Well, look, here's the meatier question from Jamie, and this is one that could have a bit more to it. And she asks, tell me what this news means for the potential of cross-realm battlegrounds. And this is something that obviously, look, there's been a fair bit of heated discussion about this one. And cross-realm battlegrounds were a part of 1.12. And, there's not to devolve into the argument of, if it's in vanilla, it can be in classic, everyone's got their own rule set for that one. But do you feel that this particular set of news we got about Alterac Valley and getting the 1.12 version either opens the door slightly more for an indication that we're getting cross-realm BGs, or doesn't affect that thought at all? I'll, again, open it to the floor, guys. First in.
I think for sure it's going to happen. Cross-realm BGs. I really wish it wouldn't. From my memories back at that standpoint, that having BGs just be your own realm really created a big sense of server community, because there's always trash talking, trying to figure out who the best team is, those kind of things. So having the 1.12 AV and the first sign of Battlegrounds being more towards that direction, I feel like it's going to happen. And they're doing that mainly for, gameplay reasons, because there were issues before with smaller pop realms and unbalanced realms that, queue times were hugely different, and it made a different experience depending on, how the dice was rolled. You get on a server that is, low pop alliance on one side and high pop horde on the other. If you're alliance, you have insta queues, nonstop, and you can just PvP as much as you want. Where if you're on the opposite faction, you would have to wait 30 minutes to an hour just to queue in, and them adding cross-realm battlegrounds really changed that. And so, that's a good point, but it really was the beginning of the end for server community.
Sonosuke, is your spidey sense tingling about cross-realm BGs now that you've seen this news?
Not exactly, no. Initially I had always thought that they were not going to do cross-realm, and I still think that they're probably not going to do it. And if anyone from Blizzard's listening, don't do cross-realm. You're going to ruin the community. You're going to ruin the game. You'll literally make PvP dead on arrival for Classic if you do cross-realm. I think it's a terrible idea. And if they implement it, even though I'm a PvEer, that would make me question whether or not I want to actually play this game. I think it's that big of an issue, and I think cross-realm should not be done. And if you're listening, definitely contact Countdown to Classic. Get in touch with me. I literally beta tested. I worked through the entire game. Let me know. I'll talk to you and explain to you why the community is the single most important factor for this, and why Cross Realms is against that.
Okay, Fred, I'll get you to piggyback off of that interesting point. Do you sort of see the cross-realm BG issue as a bit of fire and brimstone like Sonosuke does, or are you a little bit more like, I could take it or leave it?
My experience is informed by when I was playing vanilla, I was on that horde 30 to 1 hour queue time that Sonosuke is. And I definitely, I guess it goes to show how much I know the community, and that I can still recognize names to this day, 10 years later, or even more than 10 years later now, that were in those battlegrounds with me. Like, I remember, like, my rival Night Elf Warrior on the other side was named Moon Savage, and I remember this hunter that was always really good on our team and always, like, win the game for us was this guy named Biohazard. So I still remember that. The community was very strong. However, I do remember at the time being like, thank fucking God when they actually did do Cross Realm, because my queues went from 30 minutes to instant. And, just being able to play 5 or 6 games, which, granted were not as cool as that one game where I had the huge community and I knew everyone, but still 5 or 6 games compared to one, like, there's really no comparison.
Yeah. Sonosuke, I'll throw it back to you, and we'll just sort of very quickly go down this tangent, but I would be interested to hear more about this because I'm the uneducated person here who, again, as I say, I'll throw in the caveat that I wasn't a big PvP player, so I'm happy to be told why I'm so wrong on this one. But going off of what Fred just said, I never viewed the cross-realm BGs as a potential for DOA of Classic. Now, I know a lot of people have massive issues with that, and I respect it. But tell me why I'm so wrong on this, because I view cross-realm BGs as basically just diluting the pool a little bit in terms of, you won't recognize as many names. You sort of broaden that community rather than, jumping in the same battlegrounds with the same people all the time, establishing rivalries. That's fantastic. I'm presuming, in battle groups, you can still see some of the same names every now and again, but obviously your chances of seeing them perhaps are, as I say, diluted a little bit. But outside of that, what other negatives do you see in cross-realm BGs? And tell me why a casual like me should be more concerned.
Well, the first thing I'll hit on is just like, when you actually play on a server with a community, when I was playing on my server, I worked very well with the Horde groups. I was the Lionheart Helm crafter for my server. I worked across faction, so I worked with the Horde because I wanted to make money and they wanted the Helm. And so the community aspect can go both ways. It's Alliance, it's Horde, it's sometimes both if you're playing through some of the AHs. And moving that into PvP, because it's a PvP item, it helped balance a little bit more of what the PvP was. And as the PvP continued, as you started doing the battlegrounds, you had certain players of both factions that would play each other a lot. Then you'd grow to respect those players. You would say, oh, hey, that's the pre-made from, in my case, like CSM or something. Like they're a top-made, pre-made group. It's going to be a really hard game. Let's do this, blah, blah, blah. But when they introduced Cross Realm, it was literally, I saw maybe, like I didn't PvP very much at that point, but I would see anyone from my server, maybe 1 in like 50 games. Like it was terrible. Like I rarely saw anyone I would ever recognize. It was not a fun experience to me because I want to play against people who are on my server, because everything on the server, all the items and everything is basically bound to that server. And as soon as you have say a low pop server playing against a high pop server, the high pop server is generally going to have not only better geared players, but just better players, period. And I think that's an imbalance that happens.
It made the stakes so much higher when you're playing against people you knew and people that knew you. Like going out and beating faceless people, it's some unwritten thing that really removed it. It was the same for our team. We almost totally stopped playing once they introduced cross-realm battlegrounds because that element was missing, where before the stakes were so high. Like this was the team that wiped you with the last Green Dragon. You're going out there and you're going to put a lick in on them if you can, right? Like it was almost like a spot for payback. Everything just had so much more weight when you're fighting against the same people in the same realm.
I've got no doubt, as I said, it means much more to people who are spending much more time with PvP than I am. So totally valid points. I see where you're coming from, guys. We might just tackle one other point about this post that you guys actually foreshadowed at the start of this call. And I'm already seeing it pop up in comments about the news in terms of this, and I want to tread lightly around this one just because I think it's a deep rabbit hole and I don't want to sort of spend an hour on it. But this news seems to indicate Blizzard's frame of mind in terms of Classic to some people, because they feel that Blizzard's taking the path of least resistance in terms of perhaps delivering a little bit more of I don't know whether you'd call it a casual friendly game. I don't know whether you'd call it a retail friendly game. What do you guys think? And someone, I forget whether it was Sonosuke or Ayle, who mentioned that this feels like something that they do for retail, or it's bringing that Alterac Valley that's almost like the retail version of it. Now, Sonosuke, I might start with you because I think it was you that said that. Tell me what you think this news tells us about Blizzard's frame of mind about the classic project on the whole.
Well, I think this one in particular tells us that sometimes they're looking for the easiest option for them to do, because going back and trying to get the AV of old put in is going to be difficult. And then they're going to have a lot of the people who, like the quality of life people who don't want to spend 20 hours in a BG. Those people are going to complain about it if it's the old school way. And so I think that the easiest thing is doing it this way. I think that it pushes the people who want no changes, but it doesn't push us off of the game. However, cross realms is something that would push people off the game. So they need to understand about how much they can push without pushing literally the people who you're supposed to be making the game for away.
Yeah. Fred, I want to kick over to you just to keep going with this one because I find it a little bit funny, and it seems to be the nature of supporting and following Classic, this roller coaster ride of emotions that we go through, because 8 days ago we were all sitting here going, yeah, the Classic team they're all one of us, they're all just like us. No changes, baby. Look, they listened to us. We weren't happy with the content release plan. They changed it up. They're absolutely listening to the community. They love us. And now here we are today going, 1.12 Alterac Valley. That's not what we wanted. Boo, Blizzard. Like, where do you think we kind of go in relation to viewing Blizzard after this news?
We'll have to wait for the tiebreaker for the next piece of news. Who knows? Although, in all seriousness, I mean, you have to keep in mind that that news 8 days ago actually was a change from what they had originally said, right? Because at BlizzCon they said we're going to have, this 4-tiered release, and then they're like, oh, actually, we've listened to the community, we're going to do 6. So I would say, if anything, if you're very passionate about having the old AV, this should be a sign that you might want to, agitate. Be like, please, 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 Blizzard, go with the old AV and make your voices heard, because I think it does show that Blizzard is somewhat listening to the old news.
Yeah.
And maybe just this particular issue was not one that was people were talking about a lot, and so Blizzard just wasn't aware of it. So I'm still hopeful for the. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, their hands might be tied on this because based on their talk at BlizzCon and how far their data went back,
yes,
I think AV was originally released in 1.5, right? So the map actually changed significantly. I can't remember which patch, it might have been 1.8 or something, but they actually slimmed the map down a ton, right? So they might not even have the old assets anymore. So it might not be a matter of them choosing one or the other. They might just be like, this is what we have. We would have to redevelop the old one, which might not even get it back again, right? And they did remove that for, reasons, but
Ayle,
that's true.
You stole my one smart guy point that I had, you son of a bitch, because I can
see the twinkle in your eye.
I was absolutely going to go into that because, we talked about this, and when I say we, I very much so mean we on this call, because yourself and Fredmunroe jumped on a call months ago about progressive itemization, and you guys delved into the minutiae of what was said during that chat during the Classic panel at BlizzCon, and we saw the slide. They had that, the clock winding back and the information, the data and the assets that they had, and they told us, look, there was a certain point that we didn't have perhaps as much data as we would have wanted, and we don't know what patch that was, but the conspiracy theorists have gotten together and thought, and you guys correct me on this, whether it was patch 1.9 or whatever, if they struggled for information beyond that point. But it screams to me that we're getting the 1.12 version of Alterac Valley because that's what they've got, and they might not simply have in their possession the old version. Tell me if I'm crazy for saying that. Fredmunroe, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I mean, I think that is a very good theory and probably true. I will point out that, in their news announcement, they didn't say that was the reason. They said they're going to give us the one that gives us the most clarity for WoW Classic was their reasoning. But of course, they're not going to come out there and say, hey, sorry guys, we lost the data.
Yeah, my dog ate it. My dog ate 1.6.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not going to say that. Look, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens next, really. I'm just, eyes peeled right now.
Fair enough. You mentioned, obviously, Fred, that if people aren't happy with this, they could start to voice their concern and perhaps Blizzard will decide to change their mind, much like they did with the content release plan. Ayle, I'll be with you on this one because I read this post and I really do, outside of the sort of, theories about what data is at their disposal, just the wording of it feels to have a bit more finality to it. And I really feel like they've made their mind up and they're like, this is what you are getting. So, ta-da. There is a real sense of behind the community now with the positivity of last week's news that we have a say, we're the players, we can change this. And I've been, sort of given a rap over the sort of a punch in the nose before by people saying, Josh, you're too pessimistic. Don't just lay over and accept things. We're the consumers. We can help mold Classic. And I don't doubt that. But and I'm not saying don't advocate for change here. If you want pre 1.12 Alterac Valley, absolutely voice your concerns. I just think that they've made their minds up on this one. What do you guys think about that one?
I totally agree. And basically the paragraph where they say, it gives us some improvements that we're happy to have in place, and then they list them. For example, NPCs having less hit points, less NPCs, no raid boss in the middle of the zone kind of thing. I think that really kind of shows their hand that they're gonna, this is what they're gonna go with. They're happy to go with that, which changes AV from being that epic, huge, medieval battle and into, what is kind of known as today.
Sonosuke, any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that even if they were open to changing it, I just don't think there's enough time to change it. So I think that we are going to get the 1.12. I think the one thing that they can decide to do is if they were planning to have cross-realm, I think that they can still change that. But I don't think they can change AV. So if that helps.
Fredmunroe, final thoughts?
I think it's all captured. I mean, again, I would say that you probably should make your voice heard, but yeah, I agree with you. It seems very unlikely that it will be changed.
Okay. All right, guys, last thing before we go. I mean, are you still going to be playing AV when Classic comes out knowing this? Ayle, let's start with you.
If it's this version, I'm going to farm my Exalted and then probably never touch it.
Wow. Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I'll play the hell out of AV for 2 days, and that's it.
And Sonosuke?
Much like the vast majority of all players, farm AV until you're Exalted and then never touch it again.
Wow, that's a real shame to hear. And I really do hope Blizzard catches wind of this, that people are people are very much unhappy with this, that, it's content that's not perhaps going to be touched by, a considerable proportion of players. So look, yeah, guys, as we said, good news last week, maybe not so good news this week. We'll see what happens from here. Guys, thank you so much to every single one of you for being on this call. Ayle, as always, you're a legend. Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fred, thanks again. Hope you enjoy your spring break.
Thanks, man.
And Sonosuke, thanks again. Back-to-back calls, back-to-back weeks. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. If anyone has any questions, hit me up on the Discord.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. See you.